This is the ERP Advisor.
Today's episode, 5 key best practices from successful ERP implementations.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, 5 key best practices from successful ERP implementations. As you can see, if you're on the webinar, we have quite an array of people on the call today. So let me just go through these quick introductions. So Ryan is one of our speakers for today. Ryan is a director at ERP Advisors Group with over 25 years of experience in the enterprise software and change management industries. He has worked as an associate principal and managing director in the NetSuite ecosystem, as well as launching a business unit to expand ERP implementation services to include Sage Intacct, while simultaneously helping the Microsoft business unit double its year-over-year professional services revenue. Shelby Toney is our other EAG speaker for today, and this is her first time on the call, so we're really excited to have you. As a consulting manager, Shelby guides our clients through successful ERP implementations, helping to report on project risks, develop change management plans, and all other tasks the client resources do not have the capacity to complete on their own. Her 4 years of implementation experience at PwC and additional in-house software implementation experience prior to joining the EAG team have made her an invaluable source both for our clients and as an internal leader here at EAG. And finally, I have saved the best for last. For the first time, we actually have a client of ours joining us on the call. Andy Katz is our special surprise guest today for anyone who read the description. Andy is the Director of Information Technology at Komori America Corporation, where he has worked for almost 30 years to drive all the corporation's technology efforts. His expertise was essential in leading Komori through their recent ERP upgrade efforts, and we are delighted to host him on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us. And on today's call, our experts will discuss how they have succeeded by applying implementation best practices over hundreds of ERP implementations and countless hours of advisory services. Welcome, everybody. Andy, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate
Happy
having
to
your
be
expertise
here.
on this call.
Thanks for hosting.
Of course. And Shelby, how are you feeling today?
Doing good.
First ERP advisor.
Excited to be here.
Everyone's going to get to learn from you. And Ryan, I think this is your second or third. So you're a pro at this point, right?
Yeah, sure.
Wonderful. Yeah, so as I was talking about, we're going to be covering implementation today, which so many companies face the issue of failed ERP implementations, and nobody wants that, especially after putting so many hours, countless dollars into a project like that. And we're actually going to get multiple unique perspectives from like a selection, more like setting up the project side and implementation side, leadership, and then client perspective, which is something we've never really had on the podcast. So just to start this off, Andy, I'd like to start with you. What led you to seek help from ERP Advisors Group?
We migrated from our previous ERP from an old AS400. This was a while ago, and I was at Komori, but not in IT at the time. And they'd been on the S400 forever, and they didn't really know what they didn't know, and so they reached out to a similar firm 15 years ago. And so I sort of secondhand saw how that process went and was impressed with what they did and how it helped sort of guide Komori to making the right choice or making the choice. I mean, it was right because we were on our platform for 15 years. So that ERP system we've sort of outgrown it, and we decided a year or so ago we needed to move on. And I thought back to that experience and I said, well, I actually reached out to that firm. And then sort of management and our parent company is like, well, we need some due diligence. Go get more than one bid, if you will. So, I mean, I don't know if it's shocking to say or not, but I Googled and you guys, and I think I told you this is whoever's responsible for your SEO, you guys came up. I just Googled like ERP implementation search and or guidance or something, and you guys came up and I called. You were there, the first one. The size, I looked through the website and the size seemed right, and we needed help. And after talking to Erica and talking to Sean, we felt super comfortable moving forward.
Wonderful. And Andy, just to set the scene, since we're going to be talking about implementation best practices today, how was ERP Advisors Group able to help Komori select the right solution once that process was started?
It was it really once we made the decision to go with EAG. I like the experience that you have or have. I like the it was very clear the plan or the method that you used, the process that you used was very clear. Um, and also as we actually got into it was very, step by step, and it's clear that you knew what you were doing and you helped us um, sort of guide us to making, to organizing things and whatnot. Um, I mean, look, I've been through the process before, but it was great to have a partner that, and I actually, maybe because I wasn't involved early on, but how you guys really took charge with the listening to what we wanted, no judgment or anything. You just listened to what we have now and what we would like to have. Went out, found some, and then sort of guided us through the entire selection process. Here's some that we found. Here's the ones that we think that are going to fit, and then arranging demonstrations with them and sort of targeting, helping us find the one that's going to fit the best. Look, I've been in this business a while. Very easily, I've been worked with partners that they have partnerships with some of the people they like represent companies, and they sort of try to steer you toward there. I never felt that with you guys. I always felt it was very impartial. It was like, hey, we've heard what you want. Here's the ones we think will do. We'll set it up and get you in front of them. And then additionally is once that process started, recording everything and logging it all, and then putting together sort of a selection matrix. I mean, there's an entire process behind this, but from the initial meetings, out of the box demos, then EAG went the extra mile and said, all right, what didn't you see at that? We'll put together a script for the vendor to say, this is what Komori needs to see. Let's have another session. And we actually did several deep dives with a couple of the competitors that were in the mix. And then at the end, we got this very clear pros, cons, pluses, minuses. And it wasn't just cost, right? Because that's super easy to focus on is, oh, they're more expensive, they're cheaper, whatever. Cost was actually at the bottom. It was, here's how we felt and how Komori felt that these demos met our needs. I think that was just, I don't know, it was super helpful. And I don't want to knock the other guys. They were more expensive than you. What was great about them was we got a very detailed sort of précis at the end. I felt yours was as detailed or more. I think you actually went deeper than theirs. Again, not to knock them. We had a good experience with them. Actually, that's why I went to them first. But I'm happy that I ended up choosing you guys.
Yeah, happy
For
to
sure.
hear that. And I know Komori, you guys were a great client to work with. I know that the process was pretty smooth compared to some of the other implement like selections, things that we've been through. And there's a number of factors that can impact that. And just to again set more of the scene, Ryan, how did Komori's selection compare to a typical selection? And what are just some of the tips you have for companies undergoing that process?
Yeah, well, first of all, Andy is being a little modest. Komori, they're a very disciplined organization. So the fact that they, went through due diligence, one time and then back through again, we welcome that. We want you to feel comfortable. You should feel comfortable with your advisor that they are giving you good advice. That really does require some due diligence, right? So you know, congratulations to Komori for having that discipline. What we bring, though, is that structure, as Andy mentioned, and confidence, really. At the end of the day, we've done this hundreds of times, and our clients benefit from that experience. What we do is really there's a little bit of art and science to it, right? So the science is we understand the industries and we understand those schemas that make up those industries, and therefore we can help be a matchmaker to the providers within the marketplace. So we take, what can be a list of hundreds of applications, and we can call it down pretty easily based on their industry schema. The art of that is really understanding our client, in this case, Komori, understanding, okay, well, who's going to be a good fit here? Who are they going to enjoy working with? Who's going to know their business most closely, and really, pairing those together. So, as Andy mentioned, it was a great experience from the get-go, and continues to be.
Yeah, definitely. And just thank you for that great background. And I think it's super important. Really, the reason we talk about the selection and why we're talking about it for this call is if you don't select the right solution and you're not certain and you don't have that buy-in early on in the process, you're pretty much setting your implementation up to fail, which is unfortunate. We try to stay very positive here and we talk about a lot of the positives, but that's really the reality of it. And the transparency of it is you have to get these things in place and you have to be sure about what you're getting into before you dive into the part that I'm going to have Shelby go into. So Shelby and Andy, go ahead and jump in here. I know you and Shelby have worked very closely together, so the banter is going to be great. But can you tell us a little bit about this project and the unique challenges the team faced during implementation?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of set the scene a little bit, the Komori implementation was about 11 months, 11-month implementation, implementing ERP and human capital management system, other integrations with a payment portal, with a shipping solution. So a pretty complex project here. And then we had a really involved team from the Komori side. So we obviously had Andy kind of running point here, and then leadership support and kind of checking in with Andy throughout the project, as well as a set group of SMEs who were involved, and we were kind of continuing to have check-ins and communications with very heavily throughout the process.
Right. And how was EAG just initially, because we're going to dive into some more specific things, able to come in and fill some of those gaps in the beginning?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing there is Andy and I worked really closely together. EAG we always say, and as we introduced ourselves, we were the co-PMs. And so EAG really was able to fill that role of the project management tools and tracking and following up really closely with the vendors, as well. So we had obviously our ERP vendor, but then also getting into some of those integrations too. We were working with a lot of folks, as well as kind of the continuous follow-ups with all of the internal subject matter experts and kind of internal team members, and really just keeping up that communication.
Definitely.
Right. So,
Great.
I mean, I would say part of what she's talking about is, this conversation started about selection, but, obviously, clearly from her comment and from whatever is, once we selected, and from my perspective, from Komori's perspective, we lost the institutional knowledge through retirement of the people that ran that project before. We actually did a self-upgrade of our ERP system, which, again, I'm not afraid to say it was an Oracle EBS system. We did it ourselves. And that at the time, we had a person on staff who was former ERP implementation person who happened also to be a financial person. So that she was our project manager, and she retired. Now we're facing this project. I know what I'm good at. It's not project management, right? It's not that kind of project management. So I was so impressed and happy with our selection process that I engaged you guys to do the project management, like to co-PM. And that's where we got Shelby assigned to our project. And she, like, I'm good at the technical, I'm good at applications, I'm good at finding solution, figuring out what it is that we have, what do we need, how do we make it work, getting people to do stuff, following up. Yeah, no, not good. And I don't know how popular I am. I have been here forever, but and I do have friends here, but when you get on these projects, if they see me, they know, something bad is coming. So having a third party, I think, was hugely helpful, right? Because it's a sort of disinterested or impartial third party that's just keeping things on track. they're put together a schedule and they're holding you to the schedule. It's not a personal thing. I mean, these things can always devolve into personalities, but it was that I found that extremely valuable so that I could focus on the stuff I'm good at because I knew the rest of it was being taken care of by Shelby, right? Facing resistance, all of that. Again, having well, someone that knows what they're doing. I mean, that was the thing. I think everyone had confidence. I think, yeah, they've all expressed to me that working with Shelby and EAG in general has been, they've no reservations whatsoever. I never got any back comments or snide or whatever. I think that was huge, right? I think that helped us immensely. Could we have done it alone? I mean, me personally, no, but I mean, could we have found someone? Maybe, but no, I think the other part is keeping when you're talking about keeping people on track, is keeping the vendors on track, right? I mean, I do vendor management, but again, there's only so much I can do, and having Shelby there as a resource to keep them accountable and on track. And I mean, part of her PM thing was cost, right? Managing costs, making sure they're being tracked, making sure we're not going over budget or where we are in the budget and who, where these things, that was immensely helpful, hugely helpful.
Wonderful. Yeah, and when there's that many cooks in the kitchen, right, which they're all necessary people, it takes a little bit of herding of cats to make sure that everybody is on the same page and knows what they're
Right.
doing.
Yeah, we're
And
super resource constrained. I mean,
yeah,
look, we both went through it, Shelby and I didn't envy her, but everybody here is busy, right? So trying to keep them on focus that was big. That was definitely big.
Yeah, and it's knowing that, like you were saying, Andy, we're that kind of third party, that unbiased group that's coming in, and they know that when we're following up, we have visibility to the timeline. We're tracking those things. Like the reason we're asking a question is because we're trying to keep the Komori team on track. And so I think that was super valuable. And then even too, as we started to get into some of the user readiness pieces where the ERP vendor has a higher expectation of the client to really fill in the gaps and be driving those things too. Andy and I worked really closely together for the EAG team to take on some of that work of being able to, for example, in UAT, kick off UAT and track UAT and follow up with the vendor on open questions, follow up with the testers on their progress. And so things like that as we get into some of the user readiness parts of the implementation too.
definitely.
I'll just jump in here and say, Komori is fortunate in that they have, great tenure in their organization, great institutional knowledge, legacy knowledge, however you want to call it. But not every organization's like that, right? There are several organizations where you get a new controller, you get a new CIO who's been there, less than 4 months. And it's the process and it's the tool sets that Shelby and her team utilizes that brings that consistency of the approach throughout the implementation that lead us to success.
Wonderful. And just to touch, taking a couple steps back, as you've talked a lot about the change management obstacles that you guys face. I know integrations were also very heavy in this project because of the number of solutions that you were bringing together. How were you able to overcome that, and what did that process look like internally for both you and for Komori?
I
Yeah,
mean,
I
for
think.
me, we
Go
had,
ahead, Andy.
like I said, 3 or 4 of them, and some of them actually were smooth, or maybe one out of the 3 was super smooth. Maybe 2, I don't know. But regardless, there was this. To me, that's like the hardest part because fine, you're dealing with your system, and now you're dealing with a third party. So I think that was definitely a challenge, and I think Shelby can talk to. It was around the payroll and whatever. I again, I credit your ability to corral them and to keep them on target because it was difficult. It was hard to keep them. I don't want to say hard to keep the focus, but for whatever reason, I don't know, Shell, it's you
Yeah,
know what
yeah, I
that
think
was
it is
like.
that term we use of being the squeaky wheel, of making sure that we're continuing to follow up, not just saying, "Hey, how's it going?" or we're asking a few questions on the weekly status meeting, but asking about the timeline and are we on track for this date? And has this been completed on your side? Are you waiting on anything from the Komori side? Like asking them those very specific questions to keep things moving in the project. I think we had some lessons learned there around not having an expectation that some of the other groups are going to drive some of the work forward that needs to happen. And we really need to take that accountability and ask the right questions to know the timeline of training or to know the timeline of when they're expecting a data setback and really just continue to follow up and move that forward.
I mean, I
And I
thought
think
some of the questions, some of the things you were asking them, and I was like, why aren't they? You would think they would be asking those same questions of their team. And of course, we're dealing with sort of the top, we've dealt with all people, but the top level people, it was almost like what you were saying to them, then they turned around and said, oh, yeah, crap, I got to ask the team. I got to get that data from the team. And so that was, again, I think it's your experience. You've been on a bunch of these, you know, and you're not going to just let them slide. You're not going to, that was the other thing, was your dedication to keeping this thing on the rails. That was
Yeah, and I think that related to the integrations, but really just related to the project overall, I think another thing we've talked a lot about from kind of how EAG was able to support Andy and the team is just by bringing in our relationships with so many different vendors and companies and just all our relationships and then our expertise. So knowing some of those questions to ask because we've done this so many times and being able to dig in a few levels deeper than maybe the client team is kind of ready to jump in and ask because we've seen XYZ thing happen in the past.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think there's so many aspects of an ERP implementation that could go right, could go wrong. There's so many things that you have to consider. And sometimes it's hard to remember that this is your project. You're working on that. You're leading those efforts, but your implementation partner, this is not their only project. So you have to be on them. You have to be thinking about all these aspects. And there are so many things that clients go into implementations thinking, oh, the implementation partner is going to handle that. But when you really dig into the SAL, the statement of work, and you dig into the contracts, you realize, oh, a lot of this is on me. And a huge part of that is they don't understand your business the way that you understand your business. They don't understand your data the way that you understand your data. And without that expertise, projects can fail because you don't have those guidelines of understanding exactly what your business is going to need and what those workflows are going to look like and what your users need, because that's always a huge factor. And just changing gears a little bit, but staying on the same track. Ryan, we pride ourselves on methodology here at ERP Advisors Group. That's why our clients are so successful. What are, for the meat of this call, which is why everybody's here, what are the top 5 best practices we advocate for during ERP implementation?
Yeah, so we talk about technology a lot, but kind of counterintuitively, ultimately it is about the people and their utilization of the selected software, selected applications. So I'd say the number one thing is really change management, really helping an organization through that change process and ensuring that it works for them. A very close second is around the data. Data, we pride ourselves here on saying that you can't start early enough in terms of understanding how you're going to migrate your data from the legacy systems, what new data schemas are going to be introduced, and how are you going to manage those. So data also very important. Andy and Shelby have already talked a little bit about this, but if you have ancillary systems that you need to connect to or integrate with, so integrations and understanding how that information is going to flow. Is it bi-directional? Is it one way? What's the source system? What's the end system? Understanding those and dealing with those vendors as well, because they're a key element of the success as well. And then we've pretty common theme here is selecting the right partner, right? So as you mentioned, Rebekah, you can select the right partner, but they have other clients too. And so really understanding and setting up, what are going to be our management routines? What are going to be our operating norms? What are the internal service level agreements we can expect? if we have a question, when can we expect a response?
Right.
How much time will we have? When will that time be utilized? One of the things that we often look for in projects is, and it goes along with kind of evaluating the budget over time, is, you know, obviously we don't want them to be over budget, but we also don't want them to be under budget because that
Right.
probably means they're not spending as much time as they need to
Right.
on certain elements. So it's a fine line of evaluating that. And then, of course, this is a very biased response, but you absolutely should select the right advisor
Mhm.
that you trust, that can walk you through those dark times when you don't really know exactly which direction you're going to go. And so having somebody that's been there, that's done that for 20 plus years is a real benefit.
Yeah. And I think most of the time on average, I mean, you want someone on the implementation side that can commit at least 20 hours a week, right, Shelby?
Yeah,
To actually be
absolutely.
running and PMing the project. And frankly, people don't have time for that. Like, how am I supposed to do my day job,
Yeah.
make sure everything's running? How is Andy supposed to make sure the business and the technology is doing what it needs to be doing while also managing a project like that? And that's why so many people do lean on partners like us and advisors who that is our job. They don't have to become ERP experts in their free time because we become ERP experts for our careers. So that's super helpful. And I'm hoping lots of people listen to that and can start to focus their project. There's so many more aspects that go into it, but it helps guide things and get them in the right direction. And we are doing great on time. So I just want Shelby and Andy, are there any lessons learned from this ERP project with Komori that you think could help and benefit others?
Yeah, I
Uh,
definitely think one of our lessons learned was just around aligning with your partners, your vendors on kind of expectations for different phases of the project. So I think as we went into some of our pretty important meetings, so we had in-person conference room pilots, as most implementations are having either that or walkthroughs or kind of whatever the term the partner's using. And so for our project on the Komori side, we went into those meetings with a bit of an expectation as to what those would look like and what we would get out of them, and that maybe wasn't fully aligned with the expectation the vendor had of what they were delivering and what the client needed to be focusing on and getting out of those sessions. And so then we kind of had to take a few steps back and identify how we could kind of fill some of those things that we were hoping to get out of the session. So I think that was a really good lesson learned of just making sure that we have really strong alignment with not only the vendor and the partner, but the people in the meeting. So it's not just Andy and I. There was a whole group of people on those from the Komori side that were the key players in those conversations, and just making sure that everyone was clear on expectations.
Yeah,
for
definitely.
sure. I
And
mean,
Andy, did you have any?
I don't know if this was like a lesson learned, but the change management piece, if we're talking
Mhm.
about the key best practices is, change management always sounds like this soft science kind of thing, but it was a challenge, right? There are people that adopt, that are ready, they're willing to jump on something new. There are people that are resistive, and then there are people that just will never accept it. They'll never come over. That was, again, was that a surprise or a lesson learned? No, but I think it was very important to focus on the data migration. I had a lot of experience in it. I did end up ceding a lot to the partner. Um, I, I say I wish, I don't know, lesson learned. I had gotten more hands-on with them about how they did it because had to rely on them a lot. And as Ryan said, the data part of it, you cannot start soon enough.
Mhm.
Um, it's always more than you think it's going to be. Um, the partners, the lesson learned, I think you guys sort of helped smooth over any issues we had with the partner. I think maybe one of the biggest ones was around our UAT. I had followed the previous example where we did our major upgrade, and I followed my colleague's example of how to set this up. And we had, I think, something like 450 test scripts. And we went to the users and said, here, write scripts of everything that you do every day so that when we do the upgrade, you can test it before we go live. So what we did, and I worked with Shelby on this, is we gave that out to the users, and I think that might have been a mistake because they looked at that. I mean, it's an extensive list. Every group, every department, there's 40 or 50 or 60 things that they do every day or more. And a lot of them, of course, don't apply. When you go to the new system, it's like they would try to do it and say, oh, I don't see this. And it led to, well, you didn't give me anything to test. And they didn't test the things they needed to test. And they didn't get into the system enough to find that out. They just said, oh, you gave me a list that's no good. And so I think if the lesson learned there is, and I looked at this and I talked to Shelby and we might implement this going forward, is let the users build that test list, right? It gets them involved and you get the feedback directly from them, but it's now on them. It's like, you please write down everything that you do. However, you could give them a form or a spreadsheet or whatever it is that they need to record it. It doesn't have to be formally scripted or whatever. You could do it either way, but basically I think what I would have done is just ask them, put together a test list of everything that you do. And, with the warning that when we go live, my first question to you is going to be, what happened when you tested this? Right. So that would then, they would have the confidence that the system can do what it could do. And it, might delay your go live, it might, whatever but at least they're comfortable that they know it does what it was sort of presented to do. And you can find out a lot of Shelby touched on this, is the expectations and what we got from the vendor and then what turned out to be in real life when you actually implemented it. There were some gaps there that UAT should have uncovered, and some were, and some we found out after, what I call engineering and prod or whatever. That's never a good thing, but it's going to happen. So I don't know, Shel, if we're planning a major upgrade in May or sometime, is to adopt that. Would you agree that would be the way to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
UAT
related
wise?
to both your point on UAT and change management, it's really about evaluating, like knowing your people and identifying exactly what it is that they need. So on the change management side, like, yes, you'll have some more strong resistors and you'll have people that are fully on board and ready to go, and kind of figuring out how to manage those perspectives of the implementation differently. And then I think on the UAT side too, it's our lesson learned there, and for future implementations, is to really dig deep on what do they actually need put in front of them. So like Andy was saying, giving them the thorough list of test cases to build off of as a starting point. We thought that would really work for the team, but giving them maybe a much more generic list or a much scaled back list, or asking them to create it on their own is, maybe going to be a better solution for the team. So yeah, Andy, to your question, I definitely think that, going into the future with this upgrade, we want to start with having them lay out their processes, and we can work with them, together to put these things together, whether that's working sessions or whatever that looks like, but not giving them too much information and then having to scale it down themselves, but giving them a bare bones or nothing starting point.
Right, a couple of examples. Like, here's a couple of examples. Here's a test case, one, maybe two. Think of it like this. This isn't obvious, and you could make it even generic that doesn't even apply to the group or the work that they do. Just to say, here's a sort of thought provoker, do whatever you want, but we need you to think of it in this way. At first, I think it'll foster engagement. I think.
Yeah.
I love that you asked your user community to write down their own scripts. We see that, with other clients as well, and it's so valuable because sometimes an end user doesn't even know how to write a script, and that's okay. Right. But sometimes if you phrase the question a little differently, like, what do you need to do your job?
Yeah.
Tell us what that is, because any implementation partner is going to bring some use cases for the system. That's going to be very systematic. The system needs to do this. We understand that. Exactly. But it's the interactions from the individuals of what they need to do their job, where you get some of those, more nuanced test cases that may not be important from the overall end, but to that person, it's very important. And we want to make sure that they're able to test it and build their confidence before the system is live.
Yeah. And my one caveat to that would be, like, going to Sean. or like thinking about what Sean always says, sometimes they will ask for things that are completely unnecessary for the system
Correct.
to be able to do because they think it's necessary. And Sean is always like, okay, well, would you be willing to pay for it? And not that you're asking your employee to actually pay for it, but if their response is, well, absolutely not, then maybe it's not as necessary to their job as you think it's going to be. So that's just another way to look at it as well. Just because someone's asking for it, just because that's what they're documenting, does not necessarily mean that that workflow needs to be implemented in the system
Correct.
either.
Correct. I
So,
mean, it's
Yeah.
what's in the new system is not the same. I mean, people get into their groove and they're like, oh, this is what I do in the old system. So there will be some adjustment to, well, you want I always try to frame it positive. You don't have to do that anymore. This system,
mhm,
you don't have to do that. All those steps you used to take, those are eliminated in the new system. And
right.
the idea that you know what I felt, so the vendor, like I think what Ryan touched on, is they don't know our specific business thing. So they said, well, okay, we got AR, we got a sales order through invoicing. But where the things that were important to the AR people, like, oh, how do I do credits, and what about write-offs, and what that sort of stuff, because they don't know us and they don't have unlimited time to spend with us. They sort of rely on us to put those together. And again, as
Mhm.
we all have said, is the people that know that better are the people that do it, right? So for us to sort of top down say, here's what we need you to test, I think that was a misstep. I should have
Yeah.
asked them.
Yeah, and we're coming to the end of our time here, but just Andy, in talking with you and speaking with you, we did a lot of prep for this call so that we understood what we were talking about. And Komori is unique in the fact that we've been with you guys from needs analysis all the way through now. We're helping you optimize the system after the fact, after go live. We've continued to be your trusted advisor. And it was so great to see how you reflect. And that's something that I would leave with anybody on this call is reflect on your project because you never know like what Andy's talking about. He would have done this differently and he was able to look back and say this is something that I would have done differently because that's something my users would have needed. And that's a huge part of maintaining your system, regression testing after the fact, your optimizations when the system needs to be updated. You are constantly learning from your users, you are constantly learning from the mistakes that are being made, you're constantly learning from the technology that's being put out. I mean, there's so many things coming from the vendors that it is so important to reflect. And that's a big lesson that I think everybody on this call could learn from is figure out what went wrong, figure out what went right, and apply those lessons learned in order to succeed in the future.
Definitely.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if no one has anything else to add, I'm just gonna close out. But thank you so much, all of you, for being here today. Very special thank you to Andy for sharing his knowledge with us. Super unique perspective, Ryan.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yes, this will go out
Same.
before that. So, but yeah, it's always so interesting to get the very different perspectives. And this is the first time we've had a group with all very, very different perspectives for the audience to learn from. So thank you again. And everyone, be sure to join us for our next webinar, which is scheduled for Thursday, December 4th, How to Properly Leverage AI to Build an Award-Winning Culture, where Sean Windle will be back to tackle one of the most pressing topics businesses face today. How can we build an award-winning culture via AI? This is a free CPE and a hot topic, so I highly encourage our viewers to check it out. Please go to our website, erpadvisorsgroup.com, for more details, learning objectives, and to register. ERP Advisors Group is one of the country's top independent enterprise software advisory firms. ERP Advisors Group advises mid to large sized businesses on selecting and implementing business applications from enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management, human capital management, business intelligence, and other enterprise applications, which equate to millions of dollars in software deals each year across many industries. This has been the ERP Advisor. Thank you again for joining us.